Welcome everyone to our Intelligent Mail 201, What You Need to Know About Full Service webinar. I'm Teresa Chang, Marketing Promotions Coordinator here at Satori Software, and serving as your moderator for the next hour. If you have any questions, feel free to send them over. You can submit your questions in the box on your right. Questions will be answered at the end of the presentation. However, if we don't get around to answering all of your questions, we'll make sure to follow up with you afterwards. So joining us today is Kim Mock, our Postal Product Specialist. Kim has a decade worth of experience in the postal industry and serves as the Intelligent Mail Specialist here at Satori Software. If you have any questions regarding Intelligent Mail or full service, she's definitely the one to talk to. She has presented at Mailcom, NPS, and other educational forums. For this session, she'll be covering the basics of full service, giving you a recap of her Intelligent Mail 101 class, and walk you through what you need to do to get certified before the 2014 deadline. Sure, making the transition may seem daunting, but you know, now's the time to make the critical leap. So without further ado, here's Kim Mock.
Thanks, Teresa, and thanks everyone for attending our webinar today. We have a lot to cover today, so we're going to go ahead and get started, and we're going to go ahead and try and get as much covered as we possibly can. Give me just a minute here. And we'll go ahead and get this started here. Hold on just a moment. Sorry about the technical difficulties here. So what we're going to go ahead and cover is first we're going to talk a little bit about the Intelligent Mail 101 class that we held last year and give a little bit of a post-mortem on the transition from the PostNet barcode to the basic Intelligent Mail barcode. We'll talk a little bit about full service and what you're going to get by moving over to full service. And we'll also talk about all of the requirements that you'll need to cover in order to support full service, including all of the barcodes that you'll need to generate and the options that you have for supporting the electronic documentation requirement. We're going to talk a lot about getting certified for full service. There are quite a few steps that are involved here, and we'll want to make sure that you have all the information that you need. And we're also going to suggest at the end a timeline, which will allow you to kind of time this out and make sure that you're going to be full service available in a good time in order to be well ahead of the deadline that's coming up here in January. So first, let's talk a little bit about the Intelligent Mail transition that happened earlier this year. So as you know, the Post Office did retire the PostNet barcode back in January, and we did have some customers who waited until the absolute last minute to make that switch. And unfortunately, they were caught a little bit unawares, and they had to scramble to make that switch here at the beginning of this year. And of course, those basic Intelligent Mail barcodes are basically a full replacement for the PostNet barcode and include additional information in that barcode as well. One of the main fields that's actually involved in creating that Intelligent Mail barcode is the mailer ID. If you don't already have one, then you're probably not using the basic Intelligent Mail barcodes today, but you can request that free mailer ID at gateway.usps.com. And of course, anytime you're making a transition to a new technology, we do strongly recommend that you keep in close contact with your USPS personnel, including your mail piece design analysts and your local business mail entry personnel, to make sure that everything's running in a way that makes sense for you. So let's talk a little bit about full service. So first of all, let's talk a little bit about why the Post Office is going to be requiring full service. So as you know, the Post Office actually released a Federal Register notice just in the last few days. And what this Federal Register notice states is that the Post Office intends for all mailers who want to claim automation rates, they will need to submit their mailings in the full service specifications starting on January 26, 2014. So that's just a few months away, and there are quite a few steps that are required. So we do recommend that mailers start moving towards full service right away so that they're ready for that January deadline. Now, why does the post office want to go to full service? And basically the reason for that is because full service is the completion of the USPS Intelligent Mail strategy. So all the information that mailers submit to the full service program actually include all this information that the post office can use to track all the mail pieces that are in their mail stream, the mailings that are going to be coming into their plants before they arrive, and it also allows the post office to optimize their network so that they can make sure that their plants are appropriately staffed, and that also that they have all of the equipment running at the appropriate times so that they can make sure that this mail is processed in a timely manner. And again, I can't stress this enough, the post office does intend to make full service a requirement. They did release that Federal Register notice just in the last week. It hasn't been officially filed with the Federal Register yet, but they did post that on their website, and I don't see them backing off of this at all. So we definitely want to encourage you to start thinking about full service if you haven't already, and start moving in that direction right away. So let's talk a little bit about the different things that you'll need to know about full service. Teresa, could you skip to the next screen there? There we go. So let's talk a little bit more about what the post office gets from all of these mailings that are submitted with full service. And basically what they're getting is they're getting a complete look at all the mail that's currently in their mail stream. Now with the old PostNet barcode, and even with the basic intelligent mail barcodes, the post office wasn't able to uniquely track all of the mail pieces that were going throughout their system. And so with this full service, the full service barcodes linked with the electronic documentation, this allows them to track every single mail piece, each tray, and each pallet as it moves throughout their system. It also allows them to know what mail is coming in on what day and what time, which allows them to staff their different facilities in an appropriate way. And it also gives them all the information that they need to streamline their mail processing. And they've actually started using this information already with the mailers that have transitioned to full service. So you may have noticed about a year ago, the post office started delivering mail in a more efficient manner. And so you wound up seeing a lot of the mail being delivered in a more timely and a more consistent way, because the post office was actually using all the information they were getting with the existing full service mail they were getting to optimize their network, identify pieces that weren't getting moved as quickly as they should be, and they worked a lot on what they called a work in progress or a WIP information. And basically, if there was anything where a pallet or a tray hadn't been scanned in a timely manner, then that plant would actually receive a notification saying, hey, we need to get this tray or this pallet moving, and then they would be able to find that on their floor and get it moving. Now, another thing that the post office gets is their service performance reporting. So as a part of their regulations, so the post office does have a lot of reporting that they need to do to the government, and one of the things they have to report on is their service performance. And basically that's reporting how long it takes for mail to get from one location to the next. And so before they've done that on an ad hoc basis with surveys, with the full service information, because they're able to uniquely track each mail piece, they're going to be able to use that data to report on their service performance instead. So let's talk a little bit about what you as a mailer are going to get from full service. Now, what you're going to get for this, obviously, is you're going to have access to the continuation of your automation rates. Teresa, could you go to the next screen? There we go. So you will get access to those automation rates that you, of course, will want to get starting in January 2014. You'll also get some free data that the post office only offers with the full service program. So the first thing is you will have access to mail piece tracking or tracing data. So each time a mail piece is put through one of those scanners at the post office, the post office logs that, and for mailers who are using the Intelligent Mail barcode, you can actually get that data for free. You can get that also with the basic Intelligent Mail barcode. Also, in addition, there is a service called Full Service ACS, or Address Change Service Data. So if you're concerned about undeliverable records or anything like that, you can get some information about ACS through the Full Service program for free. Also, in addition to those mail piece scans, for full service mailers, you can get information about the trays and pallets as they're scanned throughout the USPS system. So you can kind of see a more holistic view of your mailing as it gets processed. Of course, you'll benefit from that optimized mail delivery that the post office has, because they've been able to use that full service data to optimize their network. And for now, there are some additional discounts that are available to mailers who mail for full service. So there is a discount of $1 per 1,000 pieces for standard mail and periodicals, and the discount is $3 per 1,000 for first-class mail. Now, those discounts, we're not sure exactly how those discounts will be displayed in 2014. I actually expect that those discounts will go away because you're actually going to be required to mail full service to get your automation rates. So in order to get your automation rates, if you wanted to do that, you would need to do full service. Otherwise, you would be paying the non-automation rate, which is significantly more per piece. Let's go ahead into the next screen here. And what we're going to talk about next is what are the actual requirements, because there are quite a few, and this is where we start getting into the work that you'll need to do as a mailer. So the first thing that you're going to need is a bunch of barcodes. So we have 3 different barcodes that are supported by the post office for full service. The first is the piece barcode, or that Intelligent Mail barcode, or IMB, and those Intelligent Mail barcodes do need to stay unique for 45 days or longer. There is a sequence number that's part of that Intelligent Mail barcode that will need to stay unique. There are also barcodes that you'll be placing on your Intelligent Mail trays and for your containers. So, either your pallets or your APCs, your rolling stock, all of those would need a pallet barcode. Another big requirement is the requirement that you submit all of your postage paperwork electronically, and we'll talk a little bit about the options for that here in a minute. And also, depending on the type of mail that you're processing today, you may need to schedule your mailings using the FAST system, which is a way to schedule your mail drops. If you have a CSA, you would need to use that, and there may be other requirements based on the complexity of your mailing. So let's dig a little bit deeper into the requirements when it comes to full service. So let's talk about the piece barcode. So basically, the full service Intelligent Mail piece barcode is just like the basic Intelligent Mail barcode, except you're going to be populating that sequence number field with a set of unique sequence numbers. And those sequence numbers do need to stay unique for 45 days. Now, if you're using mailing software like one of the Satori software products, we do have an option in our products to keep track of that uniqueness for you, and we'll keep track of that. And if there is a danger of going over the sequence numbers in that 45 days, the program will warn you. So, so if you're using a product like the Satori products, you'll be able to have access to that. So that's the piece barcode. Now let's talk a little bit about trays. So with the Intelligent Mail tray barcode, you'll notice that that barcode is a little bit longer than the traditional or the legacy style tray barcode that had about 10 digits of data. This new tray barcode has 24 digits of data, and it does also have its own sequence number field that also needs to stay unique for 45 days because, again, the post office is keeping track of those trays as they're sorted throughout their system. Now, it's called a tray barcode, but these barcodes are also used on your sacks. So if you're sending flats in sacks, then you would also be using that barcode for those as well. As part of the Federal Register notice, the Post Office did announce that the old style tray barcode or tray label layouts, so the 10-digit barcode and also the transitional, there was a transitional label that had both this 24-digit and the 10-digit barcode on it. Both of those formats will be retired in 2014. So this new tray barcode will actually also need to be be used for your non-automation mail as well. So if you're just sending out a pre-sort mailing, you'd be required to use this new tray label format. Now let's talk a little bit about containers. So containers are basically anything that you would put your tray or your sack onto. So that would be like a pallet or an APC or rolling stock or any of those rolling cages that they have there. And basically what the pallet barcode is it's a way for the post office to track those larger containers as well. Now, the post office did clarify in the Federal Register notice when these barcodes are required for your pallets. And basically the rule is if you are preparing your mail by the DMM rules, you would be required to use this barcode if you're palleting your mail according to the DMM rules. Also, if you're drop shipping, you would be required to place your mail on pallets and use this barcode. And also, if you hit the volume that in the DMM requires you to use a pallet, so that's going to be over 500 pounds of pieces, or I believe it's 72 linear feet of trays. So basically, if you have more than about 18 trays in a mailing, then you would be required to pallet according to the DMM regulations, and you would need to include this Intelligent Mail pallet barcode on your pallets as well. Now this pallet barcode, you'll notice, is quite long, and it does contain a sequence number that also needs to stay unique for 45 days, again, because the post office is going to be tracking that. So if you are going to be submitting your mail on those larger containers, if you're required to by the DMM or you do it for transportation purposes, then you would need to include this pallet barcode. And most of the software products that are out on the market today do have an option for that. So now we've talked about all the barcodes, let's start talking about electronic documentation. This is one of the bigger pieces of work that's required for the mailers right now. Fortunately, this has been streamlined recently, so we'll talk about that here in just a minute. So let's talk about what electronic documentation really is. Basically what it is it's an electronic version of all of the documentation that you would print out and take to the post office today. So that would be your postage statement, your qualification report, any supporting documentation like your bundle reports that you would have for periodical mail, anything along those lines. Basically, you would be sending an electronic version of all this paperwork directly into the Postal One system. So when you take your paperwork to the post office today, and you take that paper postage statement in, the clerk is actually typing that information into their computer, and they're actually typing that directly into Postal One, which is the computer system that the post office uses to keep track of all the mailings that are part of their system there. And electronic documentation is a way of shortcutting that process of manually typing that data into Postal One. So let's talk a little bit about how you would satisfy this requirement. Let's go ahead and go to the next. There we go. So there are 3 ways to satisfy the electronic documentation requirement. The first is the Postal Wizard, and that's a website where you can type in that postage statement. There's also Mail.dat and Mail.XML, and we're going to talk about those in a little bit more detail here in a minute. And basically, again, you're going to be uploading that information directly into the Postal One computer system for the post office, so they don't have to manually type that in. Now, when you get that information into Postal One, the post office is going to assign that job a job ID. And that job ID is a unique ID that identifies that mailing to the post office. So rather than taking all of that printed paperwork, you would bring your job ID in addition to your trays and all of your pieces there directly into the post office. They'll be able to find that job ID in their system, and then they'll be able to verify the mail from there. So now let's talk a little bit about what different options we have here. So let's first talk about the Postal Wizard. The Postal Wizard, like I said, is a way for you to manually type all of this information directly into Postal One. This is basically what your clerk is doing today if you're still sending those paper postage statements. Now, the Postal Wizard is an option for any full-service mailing that's under 10,000 pieces. And so basically what it does is it's for those cases where you only have a postage statement and you're not required to include a qualification report. So if you're doing any type of a complex mailing, so if you're doing manifest mailing or if you're doing some combined mailings or anything like that, then you would not be able to use the Postal Wizard because it doesn't support the complexity of a qualification report. Now, the Postal Wizard is fairly straightforward. You'll be manually typing this information into a website. However, it is a very manual process, and it can take time. So it's important to know that will take time, and sometimes it's not the most streamlined way to enter your mail. So if you can't use the Postal Wizard, either because of the threshold there or because of another reason, what are your other options? So next, let's go ahead and talk about Mail.dat. So Mail.dat is actually a mailing database, and basically the Mail.dat files contain just about everything that the post office or any other entity could possibly want to know about that mailing, except the addresses themselves. So basically, it's going to contain all of the information that's on your postage statements, your qualification reports, all the information about your permit. It also includes all the information about the intelligent mail barcodes that are included in your mailing. And the Mail.dat file has actually been around for quite a while, and it is a very established industry standard. So it's something that just about everybody in the industry is very familiar with. So if you use a consolidator or an MLOCR consolidator or anything like that, they're going to be very familiar with the Mail.dat files, and they'll be able to process them. Because the Mail.dat file is very comprehensive, it can describe just about any mailing that's possible. And so you can do anything from a very small mailing to a very large mailing. Similar to that, we also have an option called Mail.XML. And Mail.XML is a way to just send over the information that the post office needs about your mailing to complete that electronic documentation on their end. And Mail.XML, rather than being a big file that you would upload all at once, it's going to be short little messages. So if Mail.dat is like an encyclopedia of everything about your mail, Mail.dat is the equivalent of a short email or a text message. So it's just sending over that required information. Mail.XML is very extensible, and so it can describe just about any mailing, just like Mail.dat can, and there are no limits for the size or the complexity of the mailing that can be supported there. It is a fairly new industry standard. However, there are some mailing products that are out on the market today that do support electronic documentation using Mail.XML, and the Satori bulk mailer products actually are included in that. So there are several options that are available there. And we've got a short little animation here. So if we see down in where we've got the mailer there, if we click, you'll see that the mailer is going to send over that information to the post office about their postage statements. And then if we click again, we're going to see the additional information like your qualification reports and any supporting documentation will be sent to the USPS. And it's just that crucial information that they need in order to get that going. So now that you've selected which option you'd like to go with, let's talk about the next steps. Now, if you're going to be using Mail.dat or Mail.XML, you are going to be submitting that information directly into the USPS key system for managing all of their mailings, that Postal One system that we talked about. Now, because the post office is opening up one of their key systems, they do want to make sure that anyone who's using that, any of these technologies, is going to have the information populated correctly and formed in a way that their systems can manage that information, they can gather it, they can parse it, and that the information in there is populated correctly. Now, the way that the post office does that is through a system called TEM, or the Test Environment for Mailers. So anytime you select Mail.dat or Mail.XML as your processing method, you will need to go through TEM in order to start actually sending your mail through one of those technologies. Now, it used to be that TEM processing could take months. It could take several months in order to get everything sent over properly and everything formed in a way that made sense, and there was a lot of manual work both on the mailer side and the postal side. Now, fortunately, there are several software vendors that have been working with the post office, and we've actually piloted and released a new program called Simplified TEM that allows mailers to go through the TEM process in a much more streamlined way. So rather than having the mailer do all of the testing that's required, the software vendors actually have gone through and tested their forming of all of their Mail.dat files and their Mail.XML messages to make sure that they're correct and to make sure that the mailers can satisfy all the requirements that the post office has for that. Now, of course, the post office does want to make sure that you're populating the information in your software correctly, because your software doesn't know unless you tell it things like your permit number, your CRID, things along those lines. So, so the post office does require that you do at least one test just to make sure that you are filling out the proper information in your software. And basically what the post office allows you to do with this streamlined process is you would submit a sample mailing to the TEM environment, and then after you've submitted that mailing, you can just go in, verify that the information is populated correctly in Postal One, and as long as the information matches, you can just send a quick email off to the USPS help desk, and then you are approved. So we've actually had quite a few mailers go through this new streamlined process with TEM, and there have been some mailers who have gone through the process in less than 24 hours. So that's a significant improvement over the months that it was taking before. And of course, with any time you're taking on a new technology, we do recommend that you work with your USPS contacts, work with your MDA, work with your business mail entry personnel to make sure that everything is satisfied correctly. So now that you've got your electronic documentation handled there, let's talk a little bit about how we would recommend that you start moving forward towards full service. So of course, since it's well past January, we definitely hope that you are already printing your Intelligent Mail basic barcodes and that everything is running smoothly along those lines. Now, right away, we do recommend that you start using the new Intelligent Mail tray labels and the Intelligent Mail container barcodes for your pallets and your trays. So you want to make sure in most of the software products, this is just a different radio button. It'll automatically generate that barcode for you. It'll keep track of the uniqueness for you, and everything just runs. The tray barcodes are actually the same size, so you don't even have to change your label stock for that. So that's very straightforward. We do recommend that you start making that change today if you haven't already. Now, we only have about a half of a month left, but we do recommend that you start thinking about which electronic documentation method you would like to use. Now, we went through at a very high level today what the options were for electronic documentation. Again, if you are only ever using less than 10,000 pieces per mailing, and you're always using very simple mailing preparation, and you only ever have to submit the postage statement, then the Postal Wizard can be a good option for you. But if you ever have a mailing over 10,000 pieces, or if you ever want to support a more complex version of your mailing there, if you want to use manifesting or any of the advanced options there, then you would need to select a more complex way of handling electronic documentation, such as Mail.dat or Mail.XML. Now, we do have a separate webinar that's already been recorded called From Zero to eDoc in Plain English, and you can access that webinar on our website. So if you go to the webinars link in the Learn section of our website, there's a list of all of our recorded webinars there, and you can actually access that and view that From Zero to eDoc webinar, and it goes into much greater detail, all of these different options for electronic documentation, and allows you to get the information you need in order to select the option that's right for you. So after you have selected which method you'd like to use, the next step is starting to test. So obviously you'll need to work with your software vendor to make sure you have access to the different areas that are appropriate for your product, and start generating those electronic documentation portions there and start submitting them to that test environment for mailers. Again, if you're using a Satori software product that's already been approved, and all of our mailing products have been approved there, then you do have the access to that streamlined testing, which is just a really quick self-test that can take just a day to get done. Now, after you've done your testing there, the next step is to identify any of the remaining work that you may have with full service. So for example, if you're doing drop shipping, you are required to schedule your mailings using the FAST, or the Facility Access and Shipment Tracking website. And basically that's just a way for you to schedule when you're going to be dropping that mail off at those drop points. Also, if you're a first-class mailer and you have a customer-supplier agreement, you are required to prepare your mail according to that CSA and identify that in your electronic documentation. And also, you'll want to contact your entry personnel to make sure that, that you don't have any additional requirements that may be handled at a local level. Now, on June 1st, the Post Office is going to be activating a service called the Technology Credit. And if you're eligible for the Technology Credit, you should have already gotten a letter. And basically what that means is that if you receive that letter that notifying you that you're eligible for this technology credit, you basically have a gift card for some postage that you can spend on a full service mailing. And so by following this timeline here, you'll have enough time to get through all of the steps for full service in order to take advantage of that technology credit as it's activated. So that would allow you to start sending those full service mailings as early as June or July of this year. So let's go ahead and kind of summarize what we've talked about today. So again, the Post Office does take full service to the next level, and we want to make sure that, that everyone is prepared to move to full service well before this January 2014 requirement. We do want to make sure that you guys are strongly thinking about getting starting on this as soon as possible, because as you know, that fall mailing season, everybody gets really busy. New processes go by the wayside. Let's take advantage of this calm spring season. Get everybody onto full service. That way you're not going to be stuck in the backlog of people that are trying to get back on the boat right at the end of the year and into January there. Now, most of the tools that you need in order to generate all of the information for full service are already in the software that you have today. If you have a Satori software product, then you already have all of those tools available. You may just need to contact your account manager to activate the modules that are appropriate for your business. Full service does take some extra planning. This is not something that you can turn on overnight. It's not as simple as just changing over a radio button and entering a mailer ID the way that it was first from switching from the PostNet barcode to the basic Intelligent Mail barcode. So you want to make sure that you're thinking about this today, you have a plan in place, you've got a timeline, and that you're ready to go. So at this point, I'm going to hand things back over to Jerisa. And I think we're going to talk about questions.
Yes. Well, thank you, Kim, for taking the time to talk to us today about full service and giving our mailers out there a breakdown of what they can do to prepare early. Before we jump into Q&A, I would like to mention that our next webinar, Are You Ready to Pass TEM Testing, is scheduled for May 1st at 9 a.m. Pacific time. This is a great session for those of you who haven't already gone through the TEM testing process. You can walk away with helpful tips on how to navigate your way through the testing environment and ensure that you're successful with full service. Also, it looks like we have a bunch of great questions waiting to be answered. We'll get through as many of them as we can. For any questions that haven't been submitted, there's still time. If you have any questions after the webinar, you can contact our knowledgeable support team by phone or email, which is listed on the screen in front of you. Okay, so it looks like we'll now open it up for questions. Okay, so the first question is, will the steps and timeline be shared electronically, or do we need to take detailed notes?
All right, and so we did record the session today, and we will be sharing both the recording and the PowerPoint that was used in the session today on our website. We'll be posting those in just a few days. So again, those recordings are on in the Learn section of our website under Webinars. So that same place where you signed up for this webinar, you'll have access to that.
The next question is, currently our post office is not set up to accept electronic documentation. Can we still move into full service since they are not set up yet?
So yes, you would need to make sure that you can submit that mailing electronically. Even though they are not set up for electronic documentation, we do recommend that you start thinking about that right away. I would like to contact you offline to get a little bit of information about where you're submitting that mail. So I'll contact you offline.
What do you mean by unique barcodes every 45 days? Does bulk mailer automatically handle this?
So each of the barcodes, the piece barcodes, the tray barcodes, and the pallet barcodes, have a sequence number in them. And that's a field that you can roll through and basically make sure that each piece has a unique number that's assigned to it. It basically becomes a license plate for that piece of mail or for that tray or for that pallet. Now in bulk mailer, we do have an option when you go and you create these barcodes. When you go into your intelligent mail settings, there you'll see an option there for sequencing your pieces, and then also you'll see an option there for how you want to sequence. If you select the automatic option in bulk mailer, we will actually completely take care of that for you. We'll keep track of that, those sequence numbers for you. We'll automatically generate and assign them for you, and you won't have to worry about the sequencing. If you're in danger of using up all of your sequence numbers within that 45 days, a warning will display, and at that point we would suggest that you get another mailer ID so that you don't go over, so you don't reuse that sequence number within that 45-day period.
Great. The next question is, what if you submit 4 mailings that match the pallet size?
Okay, so and I guess we'll talk a little bit about the context with this, but basically if you submit 4 mailings and they are all and you're combining them all into one pallet, that's actually something that the post office hasn't defined yet. However, if you're submitting each of the mailings individually, and each of them does individually meet that threshold for when you would need to pallet according to the DMM regulations. So again, if you're mailing 500 pounds of pieces or 72 linear feet of trays, which winds up being about 18 trays depending on the size of the tray, then you would be required to generate those pallets according to the DMM regulations, and you would need to print out those pallet placards.
Okay. In what format is the job ID? A single piece of paper? A card?
So the job ID is actually a field that you'll get directly back from Postal One. So in bulk mailer, if you're using Mail.XML to submit your messages, there's a piece of paper there's a report that generates at the end of your submission that will have your job ID printed on it. If you're using Mail.dat and you're submitting using the USPS tool, then that job ID will be displayed when you submit that mailing to the Postal One website. And basically, it's a field. It's about 6 or 7 characters, and it's both letters and numbers.
Great. The next one is about one of our products. If we are using bulk mailer, do we need to get certified?
So if you're using bulk mailer has been approved for the streamlined testing process. So you would need to do that single test just to show the post office that you know where to put your permit number and where to put your crate in the software. But other than that, you won't need to go through the long and enduring TEM testing process.
To piggyback off of that one, what does it cost to get TEM certified through Satori software?
Okay, the TEM certification itself, it doesn't cost you anything, but you may need to purchase the electronic documentation add-on. I'll have your account manager contact you, and they can get you some pricing.
Okay. So does the Satori bulk mailer contain the necessary features for full service compliance, or do we have to purchase upgrades or options?
So this is another one where, depending on the product that you're using, the version of the product and the add-ons that you have currently, that will determine whether you need additional software. So I'll have your account manager contact you, but with the appropriate add-ons, which right now basically you would just need the electronic documentation add-on, and as long as you have that add-on installed, you are completely ready to go to full service. Everything will be supported in that.
The next question is, can both myself as a mailing agent and the permit holder receive the tech credit for the same mailing?
Yes. So with the tech credit, if you are identified as the mailing service provider or the mail agent, and you also identified the mail owner, and that mail owner was the permit holder for that mailing, then both of you can get that technology credit. Now, when you're redeeming the technology credit, it's just going to be against the permit that's used for that mailing. So if you're eligible for the credit and your customer is eligible for the credit, the permit that's used is actually going to be what's used to redeem that credit. So if you're using their permit, then their permit would get the credit, or if you're using your permit, then your own permit would get the credit. But yeah, so we can talk a little bit more about that. If you have more questions, type them in.
The next one is, who do we direct questions to regarding the tech credit?
Depending on what kind of questions that you have, feel free to contact the USPS help desk, and you can just email postal1 at email.usps.gov, and they can look up your account, see what type of credit you're eligible for, and make sure that your permits are set up properly to get that credit applied to your account.
Okay, so for putting labels on pallets of shrink wrap trays, do they have a slave-like tray, or do they have attached, or do you just attach it on tape or label stock?
So for your pallet labels, what you would do is you would attach those on the outside of your pallet. You would have one on the front and then one on the side of that pallet, so that they have access to that barcode from many different angles, and you would just basically tape that on. You would want to make sure that the one requirement for that is you want to make sure that that's not going to be under any plastic wrap. The scanners can't go through that.
Okay, and we have another one for pallets. Where do I find the requirements for when a pallet is required based on the number of trays?
So actually that's defined in the Federal Register Notice. So the Federal Register Notice was posted on the RIBS website just this past weekend, and it's about 57 pages. It's a little bit meaty there, so you have to have a cup of coffee before you read it. But you can access that at the RIBS website. That's ribbs.usps.gov, and there's a link from the main site there.
Okay, will first-class permit mailers be required to have tray tags?
Yes. So if you are submitting your mail as a pre-sorted mailing, then you would need to have the tray tag.
Okay. Is the intelligent mail tray barcode different than the tray labels being generated by bulk mailer when using basic intelligent mail barcode?
So that's going to depend on how you're generating those tray barcodes today. There is an option with your basic intelligent mail barcode to print the new intelligent mail tray labels. So what you would select in your software is you would select the option for the intelligent mail tray labels and unselect the option for the legacy tray labels.
Okay. The next question is, once the eDoc tool is activated, is there anything else necessary beyond that? Additional options, or is IT the post pre-sort software needed?
Okay, so it really depends on what you're going to do once you've generated that electronic documentation. So if you're using Mail.dat and you want to make some changes after you've run your pre-sort, so for example, if you wanted to combine many mailings onto the same pallet, or if you wanted to send this information to a consolidator, if you needed to make changes like splitting your mailing across multiple days, then we do recommend having a post pre-sort product that would support that. We do have a product that does support that option. However, if all you're going to do is you're going to pre-sort your mail and you're just going to submit it directly to the post office with no changes, then you would not need that additional software. Okay.
Here's a question about the USPS. What is the USPS process to get approved for full service? I've been working with them for a while, this individual, and keep hitting roadblocks. I've been using intelligent barcodes for a year now.
So in addition to the intelligent mail barcodes, of course, you will be required to use electronic documentation. You do need to go through the TEM, the test environment for mailers, to approve your electronic documentation. And then once you have been approved for electronic documentation, you should be pretty well greenlit to use full service. However, the post office is still in the process of migrating to this new streamlined environment, and so each of the different local entry clerks haven't been completely educated on this new process. So I'd like to contact you offline, and then that way we can talk a little bit about the roadblocks that you've seen, and we can actually take a look at what's happening and see if we can streamline that for you.
The next question is, if intelligent mail barcode and electronic documentation are becoming mandatory, why is it offered as an add-on and not included with our bulk mailer?
Oh, that's a good question, and we're actually taking a look at that right now to see what changes in the product are needed, so that we can make sure that this is available to all of our customers.
For a 7,500 piece mailing, which is the fastest method to use of the three electronic documentation methods?
Okay, so if you're under that 10,000 pieces, if you're looking for pure speed, probably the fastest method is going to be Mail.XML, because in bulk mailer you can actually submit that mailing to the post office with just a few clicks. If you don't want to use Mail.XML, you can use the Postal Wizard, but you would be manually typing in your postage statement, so it's a little bit more work. And Mail.dat can be a large file to upload, so that can take a little bit of time as well. So if you're looking for purely the fastest way, I would suggest Mail.XML.
Okay. If I don't have a palletization option, will I still get the pallet sort or labels?
No, and right now, because the regulations for pallets are very complex, we do have that available as an add-on. So you would need to have access to that add-on to generate the pallet barcodes.
Is TEM testing required to use Postal Wizard with full service mailing?
No, the Postal Wizard, because the post office is handling all of the information about pulling up your permit account and making sure everything you typed into their website is correct, you would not need to go through TEM in that case.
Do you recommend switching to intelligent mail barcodes? Do you recommend switching to intelligent barcodes now, even if we will be waiting until July to go eDoc?
Yes, I do recommend basically using each of the different steps in the full service process as a stepping stone. So it's like you're going up a staircase. First, you need to start doing the unique barcodes, then start printing your tray and your container barcodes, then start thinking about eDoc. And you can use all of those options within the basic intelligent mail service today. You don't have to make the full switch to full service. You can still do all of those within basic intelligent mail as well.
Okay, the next question is, I have never palleted a mailing before, but have done mailings with over 18 trays. How do I pallet a mailing of this size?
Yeah, so again, that 18 trays is kind of a benchmark. It's not an exact benchmark, but depending on the type of mail that you're sending, if the post office requires that you put this mail on a pallet, basically you would get a pallet from the post office, and you can source those just like you do your trays. And you would be laying out those trays onto the pallet. You'd want your heaviest ones at the bottom, and you would basically stack them like a brick wall. So you'd want to stagger them on the pallet there, and then you would once you've got it as full as you need for that mailing, then you would shrink wrap the entire pallet and place the intelligent mail pallet placards with those barcodes on the adjacent sides there.
Okay. Will full service change the rate per piece for bulk mailing?
The rate per piece? So in that case, we're not really sure what the post office is going to do for pricing. Unfortunately, there's a lot of movement going on about pricing and the post office revenue. As you know, they're going through some tough times financially, and so they have not given any indication as to what they're going to do with their pricing. So we're keeping our eyes open for that.
How much information needs to be entered if you use Postal One?
So in order to use Postal One, there is quite a bit of information. One is you obviously are going to need a mailer ID that's going to be used on all of your barcodes. You will also need a customer registration ID, or a CRID. The customer registration ID identifies your company location to the post office, and it's basically how the post office identifies you as the mailer. If you're mailing for another entity, so for example, if you're a mailing services provider, then you would be required to have a customer registration ID at minimum for all of your customers as well. So all of that information would be included in your electronic documentation. And then in addition to that, it would be all the information that's on your postage statement, how many pieces were going at each rate and everything like that. And that's all going to be included in your electronic documentation format.
So we have a question here that asks, Mail.dat and Mail.XML seem very similar. What is the real difference?
That's a great question, and there are so many similarities between those two technologies. Mail.dat is basically like one file that describes everything about the mailing. However, it can be pretty large and unwieldy, especially for larger mailings, because in some cases you can have one line or one record per mail piece in your mailing, and so for those larger mailings it can get rather unwieldy. And when you're submitting that to the post office, you can it can take a little bit of time because it's trying to upload this very large file. However, Mail.dat does have a lot of flexibility because it's very well used within the mailing industry. Mailing consolidators, logistics providers, and other partners that you may use to get that mail from printing to the post office do use the Mail.dat file as a way to manage that mailing information across the different companies. So if you use an outside company before you submit to the post office, then we recommend that you use Mail.dat. Mail.XML is a specification that's actually managed by the exact same organization that manages the Mail.dat specification, which is why they're so similar. They're basically meant to be mirrors of each other. And Mail.XML, rather than being a large file that sends over all the information about the mailing, it just sends over the pertinent information that the receiver wants to know about. So there are different messages for sending over postage statement information, qualification report information, and the intelligent mail barcode information that's required for full service. So if you're not using a company like a logistics provider or a mail consolidator, then Mail.XML can be a very streamlined way of sending over just that crucial information and nothing else. So so really it's whether you're going for completeness or whether you're going for just the required information, and so it can be very difficult to try and select between the two because they are so similar.
Okay. With Mail.dat, how is partial mailing handled?
With Mail.dat, partial mailings are handled by releasing only certain parts of the mail at a time, and that's something that you would do with a post pre-sort product, like our Monticello products. And basically what you would do is you would select which trays or pallets that you would like to release that day, and it would generate basically a sub-mail.dat file that contains just that information about those containers to the post office. And then if you wanted to send the remainder on a second day, then you would submit that as a secondary. Basically it's a mail.dat file, but it's like a subset of your main mailing. And again, that would all be managed through your post pre-sort software.
We have a question here about trays. Is there a specific order the trays need to be in on a pallet?
No, because the pallet is going to be organized by the location that's going to be handling it, and the first thing the post office is going to do when they tear open that plastic sheeting is they're going to just take those trays off of the pallet. So so we actually recommend putting the trays that are heaviest on the bottom, so the most full trays on the bottom, just to make sure that it's as stable as possible.
Okay. How do I start the streamlined TEM process?
There's actually a document for that the post office has put together that's actually very useful, which for some of its documentation, if you read through the Guide to Intelligent Mail for Letters and Flats, it's actually surprising. They were actually able to get the simplified TEM steps down to a single page of documentation. And we're also in the process right now of writing up some tech notes on our website that will describe the TEM process as well. If you're ready to start that TEM process today, I recommend going to the RIBS website. That's ribbs.usps.gov, and there's a link there to the vendor-tested or the streamlined TEM process there, and you can access the simplified process, and you can also contact our support department if you're ready to go.
Does USPS prefer one over the other with Mail.dat or Mail.XML?
They really don't. To be perfectly honest, they've basically architected their systems so that they support both of those technologies equally.
If an agent uses customers' MIDs, does the agent have to use a CRID?
Yes, the agent would have to identify themselves as the mailer, and then the post office does want to have you identify that customer as well. You can identify the customer with either a mailer ID or a CRID.
All right, so we have a pro mailer here for 7 years, done mailings of about 500 pounds. Never heard of this new rule. Is my BMEU just not enforcing this rule?
That is very likely. So the post office, unfortunately, the rules in the DMM have been fairly vague and have been not consistently applied across the different entry units there, and so one of the things in that Federal Register notice that was put out is they did make those requirements much more clear, and so if you have your coffee, I do recommend reading that Federal Register notice, especially the sections on the requirements for pallets. And those start at, I think it's about page 30 or 31 that those requirements for pallets happen there. And so as you move to full service, you'll probably start hearing a little bit more about pallets.
So what's full service? If every mail owner needs a CRID, how do you go about getting one?
So if every mail owner needs a CRID, basically the post office has a couple new ways of being able to request a CRID from the post office if you're a mailing service provider. So again, I'm going to point you at that RIBS website, ribbs.usps.gov, and there, if you search there for the mailer ID section, there's a link there for the mid CRID quick step is the link that you'll want to look for there. And basically, what you can do is you can upload an Excel spreadsheet with your customer's contact information on it to an email address, and they will actually add the MIDs and CRIDs for your customers to that Excel spreadsheet and send it back to you. And that can take just a few days. So there are some other ways of being able to request those MIDs and CRIDs for your customers, and those are all outlined on that MID page, the mailer ID page on the RIBS website. So I recommend checking that out.
Along those lines, are we still okay to run third-party mailings under our mailer ID, or should all parties be mailed to have their own mailer ID?
You can still use your mailer ID. You can use your customer's mailer ID. It's really up to you. If you're concerned about the uniqueness, so if you're concerned about using up all of your sequence numbers within those 45 days, you might want to use a mailer ID for some of your customers that's specific to them. But you're not required to use one or the other for those mailings. So it's really up to you.
All right, so it is now 10 o'clock. Looks like we'll actually go with a couple more questions before we wrap it up. There's a question, will the tracking option in bulk mailer be included with the full service intelligent mail option?
Unfortunately, no. So one of the things about the full service tracking that's available from the post office, you can get that raw information directly from the post office for free. However, it is at a very raw format. Basically, it's a text file with a bunch of digits in it, and in order to process that, we're actually using quite a bit of our processing power in our data center, and so we'll continue to have that Easy Track service available as a purchase option.
Let's see. Will there be a fee from USPS to use this new barcode?
No. No, the post office actually offers a discount right now for mailers who move to full service. And basically you'll be required to do it in order to get your automation discounts, but there's no additional fee from the post office.
And our final question: how do we save files? How do we save files out in bulk mailer, and where do we go to submit them to the USPS?
So for Mail.dat, if you're using the Mail.dat option to submit your electronic documentation, when you finish your sort, you'll have an option there to save your Mail.dat files, and you'll just select a location there on your computer to submit it. In order to submit that directly to the post office, what you'll do is you'll download their Mail.dat client application, and that's available on the Business Customer Gateway. So if you go to gateway.usps.com, you sign in, and then you go to the electronic data exchange link there. That's where you can download the Mail.dat client. You would just unzip that to your computer, and then you would open up that program, log in using the exact same login as your Business Customer Gateway account, and that's where you would upload. You would just click on the button to add a job, and you would upload that file that you had saved to your folder on your computer.
Great. All right, so that's all the time we have for this webinar. I would like to note a couple of things before we wrap up. After the presentation, please take a few minutes and complete our short survey. Your feedback will help us improve the quality of our webinars moving forward. So just to let everyone know, like Kim mentioned previously, this webinar is being recorded and will be available shortly on our website. And you can find the session, along with many other sessions, on our Archive Sessions page under the Learn section of our website. And if, like I mentioned before, if we didn't cover all of your questions, we'll make sure to connect with you offline and get you the answers that you need. I want to thank you all for tuning in, and we hope you have a great rest of the day.